Yeah, one of the things that always resonated with me was I remember looking on Twitter and I was looking at EG's CEO, right? And she was talking to someone. I forgot necessarily the full conversation, but basically like went down to where uh, this guy was saying this team was gonna win, right? He was a fan of some other team or whatever, and she was like, "Oh no, that team's not performing too hot, right?" And then the guy looked at her and just laughed at her and was like, "Dude, you don't even know what I'm talking about. Like, you don't even know this game. Like, what do you mean?" And she's like, "No, I work in this
I'm the
industry. I know this stuff."
CEO.
Yeah, like she didn't even say
I'm
that. She's
kind of
like,
a
"Oh, I
big
work
deal.
in the industry,"
Oh,
right? And he's just
Nicole
like,
LaFont, right? Yeah.
"Yeah,
She
yeah,
got
yeah."
gamer checked by a guy. I'm like, she
Yeah,
doesn't even
Yeah.
know people
yeah.
geniuses.
And then he was just like, like you don't know, like, okay, like, yeah, oh, maybe you read something, doesn't mean you know. And it's like, dude, that's literally the CEO of like, freaking one of the most iconic like esports teams, right? Um, and it's just like you said, like dehumanizing, right? And it's something that we got to change, and we can, right? And so it's like also about putting people who are proper allies in the right space too, right? That's another thing that helps with diversity and inclusion that sometimes we don't talk about nearly enough too. Um, because like if you have the right allies and right people in that space, then those doors will open up more so in the right ways for the right reasons, rather than it being this just incentive, rather this mean this choice, um, whereas people are just being treated with proper respect in the first place. And that goes around when you see people treat others with respect, and it's like, okay, this person respect. Granted, I would hope in like, I would love a world in which we just saw people and like, oh, you're human, so I should respect you in a capacity. Like, that'd be great, but that unfortunately, life is not always as kind. However, we got to seek out those people and put those people in proper positions as well. And that's another thing too. I think that is great because sometimes one of the most powerful things is when you have someone, and even for me as a matter, when you have someone who is respected, who is known, and looks like the person who doesn't want you to be there, and they can stand up and be like, "Nah, fam, this is how this goes, and this is why." And it's a very, very different tone because instead of it being us versus them, it's us, and I'm telling you right now, you're messing up, and that's a different story, right? And so that is something too, and obviously that's a little harder to detect, but I think that is very important, and I think that's great that you kind of like brought like the idea of just like being treated with respect, and it seems like such a simple thing, but it has great ramifications, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think even on a broader scale, it's always that situation where sometimes, I guess intersectionality breaks down across so many different lines, and it's one of those situations where, you know, not that anything can be so as easy as just appealing to the golden rule, but even if your intersectionality, you're in a minority group because you just so happen to be a less skilled player, bottom line is from the makeup of the uh, of the community, there are more or less skilled players out there than really top level players, and for whatever reason, there's a lot of animosity that ends up going to those lower skilled level players' way. And you would think that from a from a logical perspective, they'd be able to, or people would be able to put the two and two together. That I don't like being treated poorly for something that I don't have necessarily control over. Actually, you probably have more control over your skill than someone does, whether they're than their gender or their race. And it's one of those situations where you know trying to appeal to that empathy that if you have respect, a baseline level of respect and a baseline level of humanity for everybody in the community, even the low skill players too, the ultimately the people will turn around and respect you. it's they ultimately it feels like they almost have nothing to lose and everything to gain, because it's just from the nature of I guess identity politics. Oftentimes the minority group kind of, for better or for worse, just kind of has to take what they can get in terms of better treatment overall. And I wish it weren't that way, but it's one of those things where we got to incrementally make the gains that we can. And I know I maybe I'm being a little preachy on it, but I feel like if we can try to parallel some of the humanities that people experience, whether it's discrimination by gender, discrimination by race, discrimination by sexual orientation, um, as well as some of the policies that we put in place, attacking players for whatever reason, whether they're body shaming, whether they smell bad, for whatever reason. So oftentimes there are a lot of systemic structures that go into play on as to why things are the way they are. And I guess my plea is going to be is that if you're in that group that's not traditionally thought of as an identity level as a minority group, like the low skill player, or the stereotypical smelly smasher or something like that, there's no benefit to you for being a negative person. Positivity breeds positivity. If
Exactly.
a lot of different groups are reaching out to you and giving you the opportunity to open the door, you just got to walk through and be part of the team. I think hopefully if they take away anything from this project, it's something along those lines, that we see the shared humanity in each other and start actually applying that into a meaningful praxis for how we operate on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
looks like we're running up on time here. So, did you have any closing thoughts that you want to throw out that we didn't cover? Any spicy takes that you want to throw out there that might burn the whole house down? Let us know now, or forever hold your peace. But hopefully, we'll be able to have you back on a future show to keep talking about this. These topics, they're very important. I think people need to hear the messages.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I guess my hottest take, I think I might have mentioned it earlier. Not a big fan of women-only tournaments, or women-only panels, or women-only anything. Just put us in the actual stuff and focus less on what our gender is, and it might do more impact than you think.
Yeah.
Because one company did it pretty brilliantly. They just had a bunch of women on a panel, and it wasn't called Women in Anything. It was just a panel, and it had a title like other stuff. So that's probably my hottest take. I wrote an entire essay on it. I cited Aniki and a bunch of other orgs' work too, because I really believe they're doing good work, and it's awesome to always hear that there's overlap in the thought leaders in the space. So yeah. And another thing too is definitely support smaller developers, because you never know which game is going to blow up and be big. And you might be able to be a part of creating and fostering that culture and environment as it starts out. So you can set the tone for what it is you want to see in the communities that you take part and participate in.
Well
Yeah.
said.
No, great call. Absolutely great call. And yeah, I mean, yeah, people need to see the worth and the value in these, like you said. It's always going to be important for all of us. And I just want to say, like, thank you. Just even talking about on an individual level, I think that when we throughout the course of the conversations that we've had tonight, it's been great because we've talked about on top line and stuff. But I feel like you definitely brought from top line to individual, and I think that's very, very important for us to remember too. Um, Sometimes we think of it as this big overarching thing, and it gets lost, and it seems harder to find a solution. But there's a reason why we're even having this kind of conversation, and some of us are in the places that we are now, right? There's a reason why, and that you're able to do what you've been able to do. There's a reason why I'm here where I'm at, and I'm even at Red Bull in the first place stuff too, because there was people who believed and people who understood and people who just saw shared humanity. Maybe they didn't understand all our plights and our struggles, but nonetheless they understood that we were capable, and they saw an opportunity there, and they met that. Um, and then we can have that conversation and be in the space and be in the discussion and be shareholders, and that's how those things grow. I think that also plays to what you said about not just isolating women. Like I think Smash Sisters is great in terms of what it does in terms of in computers and in tournaments and having that space that you can be and play. And then ultimately, with people when they want to, they can go and play and go into tournaments. But I do think that we also do have to be careful about just pure isolation. I agree, because then it becomes this thing where it's like all they got to talk about is what's happening for women there, and that's it. As if like that's all they are for. Like they're just for to talk about the soapbox of this hardship, right? Where it's like, no, these women are just talented people, period. And so these topics that we're saying that are important and relevant, they should be there. And when they're there and you see them, things change from the women who see them, from the men who see them, from whoever sees them. It's like, okay, this is a perspective of someone who's knowledgeable in the space. They're sharing different perspectives. Maybe we've never had on these panels before, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The conversation needs to start, right? And the conversation can't happen unless people are in the room together, right? So, yeah, again, thank you for all of that. I think that all of this, I know that that Lux just like kind of planned it out in terms of the like order and everything, but I feel like this order worked out like perfectly. I
Yeah.
think this actually worked
Yeah,
out.
we threaded that needle
well.
of very, very
Yeah.
academic down to the very human level. So I'm very,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
pleased with how that worked out. For
Yeah,
sure.
that actually
Likewise.
was great, and then it was awesome too because everyone's just knowledgeable in all that aspects too. So it's like everything was just being tied. It wasn't like isolated. So awesome. But yeah, you already know, and I always got love for you and what you do, and you're great at what you do, and I'm always excited to talk to you more, not on this podcast, but in general, and collab and do some big
Likewise.
stuff, right? For sure.
Likewise, homie. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Always,
the
always.
love. And yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I've been breathing fire